Right now, the government of the world's largest economy owes nearly $40 trillion. And it has quietly crossed a line most people have not noticed. The United States now spends more just paying the interest on that debt than it spends on its entire military. Close to $3 billion a day before a single road gets built, a single soldier is paid, or a single hospital opens its doors. And everyone has a tidy explanation. One side says relax, we owe it to ourselves, we will simply grow out of it. The other side says this is the end, that the whole thing is one bad bond auction away from collapse. Here is the strange part. They are both staring at the same number, and they are both completely certain. And both of them have made the same quiet mistake. They think this has never happened before. So instead of guessing which confident person is right, let's do something almost nobody does. Let's ask someone who already watched this exact story play out more than once. Not an economist. Not a politician with a countdown clock. A Babylonian king named Hammurabi, who wrote down a rule about debt almost 4,000 years ago, a rule the modern world has quietly deleted. Because the numbers are new every single time. The arithmetic never is. This is the old money playbook. Where the oldest ideas about money meet the newest markets. You did not borrow this money. You will still pay it. Because a government rarely clears a debt this size the honest way, by simply handing the money back. More often it grows out of it, or it quietly inflates part of it away, or both. And inflation is just a tax nobody votes for, paid by everyone holding the currency. So if you hold dollars, a paycheck, a pension, a bank account full of savings you think of as safe, you are already holding a position in this. You did not choose it. The arithmetic chose it for you. Which means the real question was never whether this debt gets dealt with. It will be. The question is the one Hammurabi actually cared about. When the reckoning finally comes, who pays it? There are 3 things history knows about debt this size that your feed will not tell you, because none of them are comfortable. Let's walk through them, and then you can decide where you actually stand. The first lesson is the one that should worry the optimists most. Even the greatest fortune on earth cannot save you if you keep spending faster than it comes in. Go back to the 1500s. Spain had just found one of the greatest sources of wealth ever discovered, a mountain of silver at Potosi, in what is now Bolivia. The crown took a royal fifth, a 20% cut, of every ounce that came out of the ground. By the year 1600, roughly 25,000 tons of silver had crossed the ocean into Spanish hands. Few powers in history had ever controlled wealth on this scale. And Spain went bankrupt anyway. Not once. Under a single king, Philip II, the crown suspended its debts for separate times. 1557, 1560, 1575, and 1596. In the 1575 suspension alone, it froze 12.3 million ducats of debt, close to 2 years of the crown's entire annual income. How does that happen, with a literal mountain of silver coming in? Because the silver was already spent. It had been borrowed against, years in advance, from bankers like the Fugers and the Genoese, to pay for endless wars. The money came in by the ton. The spending, and the interest on it, went out faster. And when your outflow keeps beating even a river of silver, income does not save you. It just measures how far you have to fall. The second lesson is quieter and worse. A debt can outgrow a budget. But a debt can also outgrow a country. By the 1780s, France was the France of Versailles, of empire, of a war it had just helped win against Britain in America. It was also drowning. By 1788, roughly half of every livre the French crown collected went straight back out again as interest on its debt. Half. The government was running just to stand still. The king, Louis XVI, had one obvious fix. Tax the rich, the nobility and the church, who paid almost nothing. He could not. They would not allow it. So, cornered, out of options, he did something no French king had done in 175 years. He called the Estates General, the old assembly of the whole nation, and asked it to approve new taxes. That meeting did not approve new taxes. It became the French Revolution. The debt did not cause the revolution by itself. Hunger, new ideas, and a rigid old order all played their part. But the debt lit the fuse. When a country cannot tax its way out and cannot grow its way out, that pressure has to go somewhere. Same arithmetic. New century. Here is where both sides get it wrong, and this is the most important part of the whole story. The pessimists say a debt this size always ends in collapse. It does not. Britain owed more than twice the size of its entire economy after finally beating Napoleon. It did not default, and it did not collapse. It slowly grew out of the debt across an entire century. America did the same after the Second World War. Its debt was bigger than the whole economy in 1946, and by the 1970s it had shrunk to under a quarter of that. So no, $40 trillion is not a guaranteed countdown to the end. But look closely at how America actually pulled that off, because the clean story of we just grew out of it is not true. Economists went back and ran the numbers. Without years of steady inflation, and interest rates deliberately held down below it, the debt would have fallen only to about 74% of the economy, not 23%. America did not mostly grow out of its war debt. It partly inflated its way out of it. And think about what that actually means. The people who lent the country money, who bought the safe government bonds, who did everything right, were paid back in full, in dollars that bought a great deal less than the ones they lent. That was not a default with a headline and a crash. It was a default in slow motion, spread across a whole generation, so gentle that most of the people paying it never knew they were paying at all. Which brings us back to that Babylonian king. Almost 4,000 years ago, Hammurabi carved a rule into stone that would sound radical in any parliament today. If a debt forced a man to sell his family, or himself, into service, that service could last 3 years. In the 4th year, they walked free. Debt could take a piece of your life. It was not allowed to take all of it. And he was not the first. The oldest societies on Earth kept running into the same wall. Debt has a habit of growing faster than the people who owe it can ever pay. Interest compounds. Harvests do not. And again, they reached the same answer that sounds unthinkable now. They cancelled the debts. On purpose, out loud, on a schedule. The earliest record we have comes from the Sumerian city of Lagash, more than 4,000 years ago. Their word for that clean slate was Armaji. It meant, literally, return to the mother. It was also their word for freedom. This was not a fringe idea. It was everywhere. A later Babylonian king wiped out his people's debts the day he took the throne. The Hebrew Bible built it into law. Every 7th year, release the debts. And every 50th, the jubilee, when land went back to its family and the slates were wiped clean. Even Aristotle weighed in, calling interest, money breeding more money, the most unnatural way to get rich there is. They were not being generous. They were being practical. They had watched what happens when debt is allowed to pile up forever, and they knew how it ends. Either the powerful quietly swallow everyone else, or the whole thing explodes. So they built in a release valve, and they pulled it before the pressure turned fatal. We took the valve out. We decided debt should simply grow, forever, and be handled some other way, later. Now, to be fair, because this is the part the pessimists usually skip, the people warning about the debt have been warning for decades, and the sky has not fallen. And there are real reasons it has not. Unlike Spain, America does not owe silver it has to dig up and ship. It owes dollars, which it prints. That means it cannot be forced into the kind of hard default that sank the Spanish crown. And there is a deeper piece of math the optimists are right about. When an economy grows faster than the interest rate on its debt, the debt quietly shrinks on its own, no crisis required. That is the real engine that carried Britain and post-war America through. So the honest version of the calm case is strong. But look where it leaves you. There is no magic way out of a debt this big. There are only 2 doors. Behind the first door, the economy grows faster than the debt, and the debt quietly shrinks on its own. Behind the second door, inflation slowly eats the debt away. And here is the uncomfortable part for 2026. The first door, the growth door, is the one the official forecasts now show closing. The interest on the debt is climbing faster than the economy can grow. So the easy, painless way out is narrowing. Which leaves the second door, the quiet one, standing open. So who actually pays when the second door is the one that opens? History is depressingly consistent. Not the government, which can always print. Not the largest players, who are best positioned to hedge. It is the person who did everything responsible. Who saved in cash, who bought the safe bonds, who lived carefully on a fixed income, and who watched the numbers on the statement stay exactly the same while the money underneath them quietly lost its worth. That is the hidden default. It does not arrive with a market crash or a breaking news banner. It arrives as a grocery bill that keeps climbing and a paycheck that does not keep up. A slow, silent transfer from the people who saved to the government that borrowed. And the interesting thing is, the smart money already suspects which door gets used. Gold just touched the highest price in its history. The world's central banks, some of the most conservative money managers alive, have been quietly moving part of their reserves into it at the fastest pace in years. That is not a prediction. It is the oldest hedge in the book, being placed in real time by the people who can read the arithmetic most clearly. The number in front of you is new. Nearly $40 trillion. The arithmetic behind it is 4,000 years old. Every empire in this story learned the same lesson in the end. A debt that grows faster than the economy underneath it does not simply vanish. It gets resolved, one way or another. The only real choice is how. The ancients chose the reset. Out loud, in daylight, and they called it freedom. We have chosen to let the debt run, and to pay for it quietly, in the slowly shrinking value of the money in your hand. Hammurabi, a king who never saw a dollar, left you the only question that actually matters here. Not whether the debt gets paid, but who pays it. Answer that honestly, before the market answers it for you. If a government can quietly shrink your money to shrink its debt, the real question becomes what you can hold that it cannot print. That is the next one. This has been the Old Money Playbook.